At number 57 on the iconic 100 list is the 1933 Lou Gehrig Goudey card. And here to talk with us about it today is Yanks Chick on Twitter and Instagram, Susan Goudey. I know that this is a card that is one of your personal favorites. What do you think about our ranking of 57, Suze?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it should have been ranked a little bit higher. Like you said, I love this card. This card to me is beautiful. It to me, like, the 1933 Gehrig is a work of art. Like, that's how I feel about this card. Like, it should be hanging in museums, and I know the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art in New York City has this card and has it displayed, and it's exactly where it should be. Like, everything about this card, from the colors, like the design, from everything, it just, this is a gorgeous card, and for me, just is like the epitome of that era.
You know, Goudey itself, I think if you're going to talk about that era, you know, pre-war and around, you know, right in that same like 30s era, the Goudey set is really the set, right? It's the one that's the best known. It's the one that, you know, there's several of the cards from the 33 Goudey set that are on this list. And Gehrig, you know, Gehrig, his career is right before you get into those years where you get cards every year, right? Unfortunately, we didn't get to see Gehrig in all of the, you know, we didn't get to see him in a Topps card, right? So when people think about Gehrig, do you think this is the first card that they think of?
I think it might be one of the only cards they think. Obviously, the 34 set as well, because he's kind of featured in a lot of the cards. It's like, right, Lou Gehrig says. But I think it has to be the first card you think of, because there's really nothing else that compares. For Lou Gehrig, there's nothing else that compares to this card.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting about the list is you look through and you ask the question, you know, which of these cards that are not like the ultra recognizable cards, and I'm talking, you know, like Wagner and Mantle and those ones, which one of those stand the test of time? And we all know the name Gehrig, right? We all know him, even if we're not, like, I know you're a massive Yankees fan. I'm not a big baseball guy, but like, we all know who Lou Gehrig is. We all know the stories. And so I think as people look back historically and they ask themselves, what kind of cards are important to the history of card collecting? This is one that in the beginning you might miss, but as you dig a little deeper, it becomes one of the most important ones that I think you really have to focus on. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, look, I love the card. It's beautiful, but it's not just about the card, right? You could pick any of the 1933 Goudey cards and they have the same aesthetic and they're all gorgeous, but it's also about the player, right? Lou Gehrig is celebrated every single year in baseball for not just his accomplishments on the field, but everything that he personified due to the disease that he had to suffer. And everything about, like, him, what he's done, what he means to baseball, because even though he had ALS, it's still a disease that hasn't been very, like, researched, and not a lot of progress has been made. And I think they're trying to do something differently with that with baseball, like I said, because they honor him every year now. So this card embodies all of that, and, you know, it makes you want to learn more about the man and who he was.
I think that's super well said. Even to casual people, they know who Lou Gehrig is because they've heard of his disease. And you know, I remember we had the ALS challenge here a couple of years ago, and I got to talk to my kids about I actually showed them the speech too, right? Like, I think everybody's seen that, and they at least know that the clip, right? The clip from the beginning of the speech. And so this isn't just an iconic card. Obviously, he's an iconic player too. Before we go, where would you put Gehrig on the all-time Yankees sort of Mount Rushmore?
That's a good one. I think the last time I was asked this question, he might have been fifth on my list. But I think he's moved up to fourth. I have to think about it a little more. But you know, because obviously Babe Ruth is number one. You have Babe Ruth, and you go by, and it's like, honestly, you have to go by generations, right? Because the Yankees always had an iconic player of every generation, essentially. So Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, you know, Joe DiMaggio's on the list, but I almost feel like Gehrig is above Joe DiMaggio. Yogi Berra, it's funny, like Reggie Jackson, he obviously was amazing for the Yankees in the postseason, but, like, did he play long enough for the Yankees to to be on that list. And then of course Derek Jeter and like Don Mattingly, even though he never won, like there's Don Mattingly, and then there's Derek Jeter. So and Mariano Rivera. So like, it's like they kind of get interchanged depending on my mood. They kind of get interchanged a little bit, like 1 through 7 or 8 there.
The Yankees history is so fantastic. You can really like, I mean, I know I'm telling the expert here, right? But like you can take their history and you can collect through it in a way that's like really special, because you could pick, what I think would be really cool is to pick a position on the field, or to pick not a position, but a card for every position on the field, and say which card for the Yankees represents, the most iconic pitcher card, the most iconic third base card, shortstop card, and you can go all the way around the whole field and create really like a who's who list, a really recognizable list of cards. And I think, I'm glad and proud for where this Gehrig ended up. I know you said, you wish it was a little bit higher, and I get that, but 57 on this list, when you're talking about all the cards ever made, that it's still, in collectors' minds, the 57th most iconic throughout, I think is really fantastic. So Sooz, again, really want to thank you for your knowledge on this today. Tomorrow we'll be back with card number 56 on the iconic 100 list. And until then, happy collecting.